okay, here's the Steve Jobs quote, isn't it? That people don't know what they want until you give it to them.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of the same kind of concept, isn't it? That people may want photography to be more accessible, but they don't know that they want that just yet because
we need to show them.
We need to show them that.
Yeah.
I think that people is a correct term to use.
I think it's not wrong that people want, but it would also be nice, photographers, if people understood photography more. It would be a win. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. Should we start?
Should we start? And welcome to the Mediocre Photography Show. My name's Ben.
And my name's Jack.
And today, the title of the episode is Why Do People Use Such Long Words in Photography?
Yes.
And this is a bit of a summation for what this show is all about, really. That we have found during our studies. And I think that it's safe to say that a lot of people find this during their studies, or again, even people that may be listening to this who aren't photographers. I'm sure that there are maybe one or two of you out there that go to art galleries and you look at the text and you're just there like, what does this mean? So
that's me. Most of the time.
Yeah, so I guess that's what we're going to be talking about today, and going straight from there. So I guess I'm going to start with a question, and the question is to you, Jack.
Oh, God.
And to you, the audience. No, I'm joking.
People at home.
I've forgotten the question.
Well, that's...
And this is the end. So I guess the question is, can you think of a situation, or can you think of an example where you have encountered this, people using long unnecessary words in order to sort of describe something?
Oh, what, just to they sort of over explain it?
Yeah, like in the degree, and maybe again perhaps a gallery or something like that.
Dissertations mainly.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Theoretical writing, it's just one of the hardest bits of the studying, because of this whole over-explaining and sort of just making a mountain out of a molehill, really. It's just not needed, really. Wow. So, yeah, that dissertation for me. Just getting flashbacks.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's the reading around the photography, wasn't it? And, I was quite lucky that I'm always did quite well in the essays. Well, apart from second year.
Which I will just mention, actually, quick tangent, that year, I actually got a better grade than you that year.
You did, yes.
And I completely flopped the third year. So
yeah, well, exactly.
Dissertation was awful.
But I remember our lecturer making us read On Photography by Susan Sontag.
Oh, jeez.
And look, I'm not going to try and turn around and be like, oh yeah, I completely understand it. And I think that there is a good to fair chance that it was perhaps a problem with me, but nobody got it.
No.
Even the other, quite academically orientated people in the group.
It turned into a bit of a sort of joke.
Well, it was a meme, wasn't it? It became this meme. We had a shrine to the book in third year. I printed it on a mug.
Put it on the mantelpiece. I think it might have been the whole year.
Yeah. And, I have tried on multiple occasions to sit down and read it, but it's so heavy going, and it turned me off so much to that side of photography that I just couldn't. And occasionally I have picked it up and I flipped to a random page, again mainly for the memes.
One or two bits, yeah.
And there are bits in there that are interesting little snippets, but the way that it is written is so overly complicated. And this is, I think, the foundation of the problem that we kind of have, that I see it so often in different people's projects, when people are writing about photography, that they feel the need to overcomplicate relatively simple points, or almost have a good idea wrapped up in this tapestry of long, complicated, unnecessary adjectives in order to make themselves feel a lot more intelligent than they actually are.
It's to fit in with the crowd, isn't it?
It's to fit in with the crowd. I think that there's a few points. I think, yeah, fitting in with the crowd is definitely one of the main ones. It's because everybody else is doing it, you feel that you have to do it,
yeah.
Otherwise you're going to be seen as the dumb one.
Yeah. And here we are, outing ourselves.
Yeah, literally. I mean, well, I guess it's outing ourselves, but then it's also, I mean, the descriptions that we had for both of our books weren't that, were they?
I used the thesaurus a couple of times.
You used the thesaurus. I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah,
Right.
I tried to keep mine quite simple, but, you know.
But it was that reading other people's and going,
yeah,
maybe I should.
Yeah. And I don't know if that stems entirely from education. Yes, we're on that topic already. But I feel like that comes quite early in the education cycle of a photographer. So if you look at the traditional route that somebody would take to become a graduate, they would probably have done an A-level in photography, and then they probably would have gone on to do a degree in photography.
Yeah.
And I actually never did an A-level in photography.
I did.
Yeah.
It was no fun. And you know what? We did not learn a single thing about theoretics.
Really?
So it must be just starting degree.
Well, that's really interesting. I would have thought it would have been the opposite.
No, I think we did a couple of, obviously the main like photographic projects, but we got handed briefs. But I don't remember in the college that I was in doing a dissertation or anything like that, or even having with words with projects. We weren't told to sort of make them sound like, oh, that sounds a bit too dumbed down for me. You know, we didn't. You just wrote what you, and it might be because college is like you're still deciding what you're doing, whereas, you know, with a degree you're paying for this shit, so you are in it for
you're
the
meant to
long
know
run.
what you're on about.
Exactly. But yeah, we didn't do anything theoretical in college.
That's interesting.
It is a degree onwards.
So it does come from a degree, but I think that a lot more and more photographers are getting degrees, and this is the broader topic of conversation, which we should probably stay clear of, about more and more people becoming degree educated.
Yeah.
And just as a slight tangent, I think that photography, because of the nature of the beast, it does attract a lot of people that perhaps feel that they're forced to go to uni. I mean, that's actually, you know, I'll be the first person to admit that that's why I studied photography, was that I was forced to go to university and didn't want to do the subjects that I did at an A-level.
Yeah, that was the same with me. I didn't have good enough grades to do anything else, and luckily the lecturer we had came to me and said, I need numbers, you need something to do. That'll do.
Woo!
Yeah,
high-end degrees.
you can tell I'm a dedicated
student.
Yes.
Well, yeah, so I think that education is a big factor into it. And again, this comes with quite a lot with the culture of the degree as well, of you need to do something with your time effectively. You need to be doing something for 3 years. So learning about that high-end theoretical discourse, although is potentially useful in certain walks of life, I think not necessarily for all aspects of photography.
And also not for every person. You know, I went to photography, funnily enough, to take photos.
Did you?
I did.
Oh my God.
And do you know what?
You poor boy.
Yeah, I know.
I did a photography degree to write a dissertation.
Well, this is really weird. It's like my point is correct. You get people that go to do photography because they want to write dissertations, they want to write lectures on photography and all of this jazz, but you get other people that don't want to do that, and then see these people writing these dissertations and long words, and then they go, "Oh my God, this is far too." It's yeah. I think it's this sort of it's the sort of
It's tarring everyone with the same brush, isn't it?
yeah. It's sort of comparing yourself to someone that you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can we sort that out? Right, if you were
Sorry,
Professor,
I just cracked my knuckles
yeah,
into
that's
the
gonna
microphone. Sorry,
like just gonna ASMR this shit right now. Like there's gonna
I'll crack 'em up, yeah.
like that is just split the audience in absolute two. That you've got 50% of people that are there like,
Ooh.
and 50% of people there are like,
Ooh, I like the sound of this podcast. I like the sound of this podcast. Anyway, sorry, I just completely threw you on there.
It's fine. I remember my question. So if you were Professor Jack Bevan Henderson,
A few years yet,
and you were writing a course for an undergraduate degree in photography, how would you ensure that the information that you are giving is complex enough to warrant somebody getting a bachelor's degree? Because there does need to be a level of education there. You know, we're not saying, oh yeah, you know, we need a free ride through our degree because that would be a lot easier.
That would be a lot easier.
It would be a lot easier, but you know, we understand that you get letters after your name for a reason.
Yeah.
But so you have that one end of the spectrum where you need. Sorry, I keep touching my mic. You have that one end of the spectrum
That's
where
just
you need
turned
that
50% of this.
ASMR mic touching. Yeah, you have that where you've got, you know, one end of the spectrum where you've got we actually need to do something with our 3 years. You know, we need to have some kind of cost effectiveness from our degree.
Yeah.
It cost us 30 grand. To the other end of the spectrum where, well, at what level is it arty-farty bullshit? And, you know, what do you think is that line? Where do you think is that happy medium with that?
I still think it shouldn't be one course. I think surely it should be like that would be my dream, would be to take a photographic course to take photos. Whereas, but then you've got like writing degrees, haven't you, and stuff like that. Which I don't, and I think that's again doing a photography degree just taking photos I don't think it warrants having the letters after your name.
It depends on what you want to go into, and
that's exactly it.
This is the disadvantage of the degree that we were on.
Yeah, it was very broad.
No, it was very fine art.
Oh right,
it was very fine art. Like, how many lecturers did you have on starting your wedding photography business? And this is my point. How many lecturers did you have on the history of contemporary fine art photography and the relationship between whatever, I don't know, Fischelli and Weiss and the still life movement and how that related to Dutch still lifes of the 1800s? I remember that lecture very specifically from first year.
Well, I know who Fischelli and Weiss are.
Exactly.
That's all.
Well, you remembered. Well, congratulations. I did actually use Fischelli and Weiss because I knew you like them.
Well, I saw them at the Guggenheim.
Did you actually?
In New York, yes. I got the T-shirt.
That's
my big great anyway. With the panda on rat. It was mad. It was mad good. It was like they had like photos on the, because you know the Guggenheim's like.
I have never been to the Guggenheim. I've never been to.
You've looked at the outside of it.
Probably.
It's the one that's like a cylinder, like dome. It's like a dome, but like wider. It's like more an oval dome. You see Mr. Popper's penguins?
No.
Oh, well, no taste.
Am I having like a fever dream right now?
Oh no, it's like it's a massive spiral.
Right.
There's no stairs, and like there were pictures all on the wall, but the photography side of it was really weird. It was like proper experimental sort of stuff. There was video stuff, but the sculptures were so fucking good. They were amazing.
Yeah, I do love the
Although,
sculptures. They are.
I will just admit I didn't understand much of it, obviously. Yeah, but I did go in and go, oh, that's well cool. That's awesome.
Good. Well, I've completely forgot my point. Anyway, oh yeah, that was it.
The
you know,
Guggenheim, it's an oval.
the Guggenheim is an over. That was the point we're making. No. So
Not a dome. What am I on about? Domes go like that. Ovals go like. It's like a. Oh, fuck it.
we were talking originally about
Mr.
my
Popper's hypothetical
relationship.
lecture.
Yeah. Anyway, but that was the disadvantage that we had of our degree, was that it was very fine art orientated. And for example, she won't mind if I use her name, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Who is studying at Leeds Uni, is a much more commercially orientated photography degree. So we are only looking at this one way through the looking glass, if that makes sense. But I do know as well that Caitlin does have to do a lot of sort of theoretical discourse as well. Yeah, definitely.
What, for commercial stuff?
Yeah, it's more commercial, but then there is a fine art element to it as well. But her degree is a lot more rounded. Also, it's not just photography, it's photography, media and film, I think. So yeah. So I think that if it was Professor Ben and
a few years yet.
Well, less than that. And I was writing a course, the answer for me would be that there still has to be this element of, you need to write about your photography. You need to be able to substantiate your ideas. Again, I am a firm believer in that having a degree in photography means that you need to be able to do more than just take pretty photos. You need to be able to take pretty photos and justify it to an audience, justify it to a lecturer, justify it to yourself, and show that you have the ability to think critically about work. However, the problem is that people aren't taught how to write about their work.
No, we didn't have much on that, did we? And it seemed a bit rushed.
Yeah, and it was on a one-on-one basis, and I do remember. And again, this isn't a criticism of the degree. I think this is a criticism of
just
the
education, the type of that sort of education.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a criticism on, again, how the culture of photography is, but we only really got taught how to write about our projects when we were writing about our projects.
Yeah.
Which was sort of like, that nearing last crunch time, as it were.
Well, maybe, do you reckon it should have been at the beginning then?
I think that it should have been as a series of lectures.
Yeah, because then you can sort of edit it and change it. It's sort of like, funnily enough, a mini dissertation.
Yeah, exactly.
You come up with your main thing and your title, and then you sort of
but I found that writing a dissertation was a very, very, very different experience to writing about my work, because with the dissertation I didn't have that personal relationship with it as I did my own work.
I don't know, you like national parks?
I love national parks, and I am very proud of my dissertation, but it's not it doesn't have the same intimacy that a photograph has.
That's like me. Funnily enough, I don't have that much of a intimacy with World War II.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the Sonderkommando. But
but you see what I mean in terms of when you write a dissertation, you write draft 1 and then you go back and rewrite it because you've learned something different. It would be the same with a sort of writing for your work. You'd write it out, realise it's shit, and then write it again because you've learned something else. Your lecturer's told you something, you go, oh, that's actually quite interesting, and add that in, and then you sort of come out with, because also the other thing is that because we were writing them there and then, it felt like they were all like far too short because they were a bit, rushed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that I would say is that writing about somebody else's work is significantly easier than writing about your own.
Yeah,
because again, you don't have that
other people have thought for you.
Level. Exactly. And I've been reading this, and for those who are not watching, this book is called How to Write About Contemporary Art by Gilda Williams. It's actually a really, really, really good book. Honestly, she's the most sassy writer in the world. I love it. But she sort of sets the challenge that that you should be looking and thinking critically about everything that you see in the fine art world. And I was looking at a photographer. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. It wasn't a particularly well-known photographer, but I remember them doing a series of documentary work out in Pakistan, maybe. But I remember sitting down and thinking quite critically about the work that I saw, which, in all honesty, wasn't very good. I do remember the photographer's name. I'm just not mentioning it. But
we'd like guests on this show.
Yeah, we would like guests on this show, and yeah, that's why I'm not mentioning it. But I remember sort of sitting down and thinking, okay, well, if I was to write about this work, this is what I would write. And I felt that it actually came quite easy to me. It might have been complete dog shit, but...
So what you're saying is, did you want someone else to write about your work? Would that be...
I think that that's a skill that people should have. I definitely think that that's a skill that people should have.
That's not a bad idea. Writing a... I've completely forgotten what they're called. The piece of writing...
A synopsis?
Yeah. About someone else's work. That could be good practice for writing your own.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess we sort of looked at them, but we didn't really practice writing them.
Yeah. And having that sort of element of how to structure something, how to... ascertain what the photographer is trying to say through their own images, how much or how little information a photographer has. But then the other thing that's quite interesting is to what element you are giving your own opinion about the work and to what element you are giving factual information about your work. Where is an opinion an appropriate place to be put in something like that as well?
But haven't we were told to speak in like the third person, weren't we? So then, sort of, you can't then go into opinion as much. But why would you also why would you need opinion in a synopsis then?
Synopsis. Oh well, I think that synopsis and criticism is something that's quite.
Oh, you talk about
closely
criticism.
linked. Well, I think both.
Both. Okay.
There's something that the grey area is quite big on. So yeah, I think that's how I would personally go about trying to debunk that, stemming it from the beginning. And I'm one of these people, I'm a very firm believer in this, that I think that criticality needs to be taught from a lot younger age anyway. And I think that critical thinking should be something that started in primary school. And
maybe not dissertations. Could you imagine?
10,000 word from like year 3.
Yeah. Maybe not.
No, but like
critical thinking. Definitely.
Yeah, critical thinking is definitely something that should be started a lot earlier, and therefore I think that would allow the critical ideas of fine art to be formed in a much more coherent way as one gets to that point in their degree.
Yeah.
What else have we got written down here to talk about on this?
I don't know.
We've spoken about education. Oh yeah, I think we should probably talk about a counterpoint. A counterpoint on people who are out there who perhaps do have quite a large vocabulary, who feel that when they are writing about their work,
it's a piece of piss.
It's not necessarily a piece of piss, but they do need to use more complex words.
Oh right, they feel the need to. Well then, that again, I'm just saying what we said earlier. It's sort of like being not forced to, but you're seeing everyone around you do it.
That was the camera.
I'm
going to play devil's advocate for a second and just say that... Are you going to go and do it? I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and say to you, well, actually, no, that's not the case. That I have thought long and hard about my project. I have thought about what my project is going to say. It is a complicated project, and it's sorry, I'm getting really distracted by Jack fucking about with the camera. And the only way that I can express that project is by using long and complicated words. And I can appreciate that position, and I can appreciate that sort of side of things. But at the same time, I think that you're forgetting one of the key things about what it is to be a photographer, and that is that your work should be accessible by absolutely everybody. And it's all good and well, you know, you expressing your work to the 1% of people who happy?
No.
No? Is it dead?
Dead.
Out of memory.
Out of memory. I'll tell you what, this is a new bit that I think is inspired by another podcast I watch, Tiny Meat Gang podcast, where they cut off the podcast, the video side of the podcast. I think we shall start doing.
I think we might need to invest in a larger SD card.
Yeah. But this is the thing. As soon as we become famous photographers,
SanDisk will be sponsoring us with the biggest SD card.
No, maybe not them. We'll have to start somewhere else first. But
Alexa.
Yeah. Anyway, what were you talking about? What were you
Well,
about?
we were I was getting onto the subject of, and we haven't really spoken about this. We kind of spoke about it in the pre-bit of having our photography available to more people, as many people as we possibly can.
Yes.
Do you have some opinions on that?
Let me take a drink first. What, the photography needs to be more accessible?
To everybody.
To everybody, yes. Not only for photographers' sake, but for people's sake. Because I think depends whether people like photography, really. Because this is the thing. You're getting people that go to exhibitions, like my gran. She goes to exhibitions all the time. But she goes to lots of art stuff, and weirdly enough, she gets the whole sort of blank canvas thing. She knows what that's about.
Okay.
But she came to our exhibition, and some of the things, she was there like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, it's the same with my mum as well. My mum, and it's a bit of a running joke on when we were studying, wasn't it? That my mum very sincerely believes that I've wasted my entire degree because I just took photos of trees.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I did. If you didn't catch the previous episode where we introduced ourselves, I am a landscape photographer. Trees are kind of my fucking bread and butter. But when I tried to explain to my mum, well, actually, that's not what the project was. It's not trees. My project was looking at a personal response to political uncertainty within the UK and using the landscape to explore that political uncertainty and visualize it in order to create a discussion around said political situation. I'm trying to avoid using the B word.
Bitch.
She turned around and called me pretentious.
Yeah.
And she was like, they're just photos of trees.
Yeah.
And
but it wasn't your. I don't know whether it wasn't your explanation about your project, your synopsis, but it was. I reckon that's just a sort of. She's seen photography before, and now she's looking at more photography. It's all the same.
Mm.
It's not really, which is why.
Some are in colour, some are in black and white.
Exactly. Some are of trees, some are of the ground.
Some are of rocks.
Which is why I think I've hit gold with my sort of projects, is that they're very literal. Like, you get a story and you follow that story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, which is why I think that people, it is just that next level of thinking.
Yeah.
That people aren't sort of not educated to.
Okay, well, I've got a question for you then. To what extent do you think the description or the synopsis of your project adds to your project? Or another way of thinking about this would be, is your project as effective as just photos?
My project.
Your project.
My project.
Your project, and also all projects ever.
Well, my project, it needed words, because I tend to keep mine quite vague, so I needed some sort of explanation to sort of explain what the fuck's going on.
The emptiness is a metaphor for sadness.
Exactly, and the distance, well, you can.
That's a metaphor for distance.
And the trees, they're just trees.
They're just trees, according to
no,
my
and
mother.
I think that my personal project needed words because there were no words in the book. It didn't really show much on the picture I put up, and so it needed something to explain, what the fuck was going on. But then some don't. They have different.
A really good example of a project that has a description but isn't overly complicated? Gap in the Hedge by Dan Wood.
Yeah.
As a really, really good, simple explanation about what the project is about without it being pretentious.
We would like guests on this show.
Dan Wood, if you're listening.
Yeah. By the way, he's like the coolest photographer ever. I think his talk, another tangent.
His talk at Martin's.
Yeah, it was so good because I reckon your mum could have walked into that room, listened to him talk, and got the project.
And understood what it was. Yeah.
And do you know the weird thing is that the photographer before him, he was talking about his project and he'd gone through all the education, whereas Dan Wood hadn't, but he spoke in a way that everybody would understand.
Yeah.
So it definitely is, it goes back to
it comes back to this education thing, doesn't it? Yeah.
But then tangent over.
Yeah, but then I think that other projects that don't necessarily have that words and those descriptions do need it. I remember looking at Hiroshi Sugimoto. Remember that? The seascapes.
Yeah, they're quite sort of abstract, aren't they?
They're quite incredibly the most abstract thing you've ever seen.
A bit bland, aren't they? A bit bland.
Yeah.
Joking.
I think what we should also do as well is actually link all of the things that we're talking about, like Gap in the Hedge, how to write about contemporary art, Sugimoto. We'll put it in the description and show notes and stuff, just so if you aren't familiar with the work, then you can go ahead and check stuff out. But no, I when I was looking at Sugimoto, because it was so abstract, I was really struggling to understand why. I understood what it was, but I didn't understand why it was what it was.
Why they did it.
Why he did it, yeah.
Glad you said he, because I didn't know whether it was a he or she. I've not looked at their work, but I have seen it before. But But they're, as you say, very, very abstract. But it's stuff that they don't have any context. If they don't have context in the images,
there needs to be more of a justification in the words.
But if you've got context in the images, but then you sort of look around at work nowadays and it's becoming more and more vague.
Yeah, I suppose it is. And I think you need to I think people find that they need to be more edgy if they want to stand out and do what they want to do.
Projects need to be bigger and better.
Yeah. Well,
or maybe not.
People think projects need to be bigger and better.
No.
And I think I'm a brilliant use case for this, actually. my lecturer was constantly turning around to me and saying, you don't need to be edgy. You don't need to be edgy about what you're doing.
She did proper shut you down.
She constantly, every day of my life. But,
no, Ben, this is not this. You're confusing it too much.
Yeah. But, yeah, and that was literally it. You were like, no, strip it back. Keep it simple. Make it work. And I think that she was absolutely right.
Bang on.
And maybe that's also the reason that my work isn't famous yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
Few years.
But, it's it doesn't necessarily have to be. But again, it comes with that contextualization, doesn't it? That it's not just the photos that are getting bigger and bolder, it's the ideas that are getting bigger and bolder as well. And
the theoretics behind it.
And the theoretical discourse behind it as well. Oh my God, you weren't here for this, but I remember going to a conference. Yeah, I know, right? Because I'm the coolest kid. I love how you already know this story straight away.
Because you came back home.
I was immediately fuming about it. I was so angry. It's all I spoke about for like the next 3 days.
It's true.
So
it's true.
I was at a conference and they had a photographer, a fine artist who did quite a lot of textiles, I think, and also a professor of literature, and I think she was also a spoken word artist as well. I can't remember the names or anything like that, which is probably for the best because they don't come off very well in this story. And they were talking about their own practice, and the Land and Water Conference was all based around sort of climate change, and that was a centralised theme of the work
well, now they know
of
who
the
they
day.
are, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Whoops. We do want guests on this show.
Yeah.
And the photographer was showing off his own work, which was effectively him photographing plastic bottles in the beach, which I absolutely categorically hate. I see it fucking everywhere at the moment, and it's not an original idea. Exactly, it's not an original idea.
No.
It's not anything that's complicated or edgy. It wasn't particularly well done. It was just plastic bottles on the beach. It's like, yes, we know that there is a problem with plastic pollution, but photographing this in the same way that 20 million other people have photographed it isn't going to change anything.
People that haven't done photography before.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure people have just gone to the beach and gone, wow, look at this.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, in my opinion, he wasn't a very good photographer. And he started basically shitting on another photographer who is much more famous than he is, called Edward Batinsky. And for those of you who don't know, Batinsky is a very famous,
very well regarded
landscape photographer who is his main thing is photographing aerial shots of polluted areas. So, he would be photographing the pollution that comes off copper mines into water, and almost it looking like veins on landscapes. So very sci-fi. Again, I'll link to some of his work.
These pictures are also like massive in print.
Oh yeah, absolutely huge. And this guy, who's not a very well-known photographer, was basically shitting on Batinsky. And as somebody who I studied Batinsky quite a lot in third year particularly, and I wanted to, and I always personally held him in quite high regard, so I wanted to understand more about the criticism that it was, because the criticism was very personal. I felt it wasn't like
someone got the second highest grade in class. No, I'm talking about him.
Yeah.
He's probably probably knows him personally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this was it. Like, it did feel like, Batinsky had come and slapped him or something at some point with his giant prints. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it came across very personal. I asked the question, well, I'd like you to elaborate more on your criticism. Because Batinsky, I've always held
That's
in
a
quite
fair
high
enough
regard.
question, Ben.
And I think that was a fair enough question. This guy then attacked me personally and said, "Oh, well, I'm Northern. I say it how it is. I
That's not
just don't think he's a very good photographer." And I'm like, yeah, but why? Like, again, substantiate your fucking opinion, which is coming back to the point that I was trying to make, that he was getting very, very angry and very, very upset about not being able to properly articulate what he was trying to say.
Right.
I was getting very, very angry and very, very upset about his inability to properly articulate what he was trying to say. And like I say, it was a bit of a cluster for everybody involved.
Do you reckon his work would have been any better if he had explained it properly?
No.
Oh.
But I think that his criticism, and this is another thing that we should be very aware of as, you know, people that may potentially have a voice that is listened to, but his criticism came off completely in the wrong light. It actually took another member of the audience to turn around and say, well, and for those who are interested, I do remember the criticism, her point, and I think it is a very valid point, that when you're looking at Batinsky, he looks at a theory which is called the Anthropocene, and the Anthropocene is effectively looking at how man is master of their own environment. And
so if we fuck it up, it's
our fault, effectively. Yeah. And the Anthropocene was actually
this is the photographic dictionary with Ben.
literally. But the Anthropocene was originally coined by climate scientists, but then it's kind of been hijacked by environmental photographers. So it's a word that is thrown around quite a lot in environmental photography circles. But anyway, so she was saying that, you know, Batinsky works quite a lot with the Anthropocene, but isn't necessarily doing it in the correct way because he's shooting from quite high up down. It's a very godlike perspective of the situation, that we have this, again, almost like this through the looking glass field with it. And we are here, but we are not open, we are not actively engaged with what is going on. Which I think is an absolutely fair enough criticism, that we're not on the ground with that. It gives a wider perspective and a wider appreciation for it, but we don't have that connectivity. However, photographing plastics on the beach is a more intimate response to the same problem, and something that we can be more involved with trying to sort out.
Right.
It's not a criticism that I necessarily agree with, but it is a criticism, and it is a very, very valid point.
It's also, I don't think Batinsky's got the time to stop diggers and stuff. I think it's more a point of, funnily enough, getting people to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly, which is what he's successfully managed to do. We're talking about it right now.
Oh, shit.
He won.
You Batinsky.
So that is a very good example of a photographer who criticized somebody in the wrong way and created a lot of confusion and upset about what he was saying, because he was, I think, not necessarily misinformed, but
he just didn't use the right words.
He didn't use the right words and the right terminologies, and he tried to fluff up and overcomplicate what he was saying in order to get his point across. The other thing that I should mention, which was quite funny about this situation, was this turned into quite a big debate throughout a few people. Like, when I made my point, a few other people chimed up and was like, yeah, what's your problem? Like, kind of like ganged up. And
Ben, surrounded by huge photographers.
Yeah, well, this was it.
Southern was there, wasn't he?
No, Liz Wells.
Liz
Wells, who has written incredibly extensively on Batinsky.
We would like guests on the show.
Yeah, Liz, if you're listening. And Liz did actually say it was very interesting for the criticism to be made, and it was very interesting listening to that discussion. But she said, as the chair of the,
she didn't want to get involved.
But no, Liz was, I think, quite interested about that. I also would like to point out that I tread very, very carefully with my question as not to embarrass myself in front of Liz.
Because you are an even smaller photographer.
Exactly, yeah.
But no, that just makes the point that if you're overcomplicating things, it sometimes does not work.
Yeah, Absolutely. And it all comes back to education. It all comes back to how people write about this.
Taught as well.
And taught. And I think we'll take this opportunity to read a couple of bits from How to Write About Contemporary Art, because it is a very interesting book, and there are a few things that I think a lot of people can learn from it. So by the way, it's available on Amazon, by the way. So yeah, do seriously buy it, because it's really made a big difference.
I will have to borrow it.
Yeah, do. But one of the paragraphs she says is, virgin art writing usually begins with a phrase like, "When I first entered the gallery, I was struck by blank." Venturing further, though omitting to describe the exhibition, the novice instantly forgets the art and lets memory take him somewhere else. The discussion comes all about the writer, not the art, and swamped beneath the rush of ill-informed notions, anecdotes, and half-baked interpretive angles and inexplicable associations, all played with the writer's uncertainties. Where to start? How many and which artworks to discuss? Where to end? How to balance description and factual information about the artist and exhibition? Where to inject my own musings? In an attempt to cover everything, the newcomer tosses to a slew of worn, abstract notions such as subversion, disruption, formal concerns, displacement, alienation, today's digital world.
God.
Concept pile up like automobiles colliding in a wreck, flying off in every direction, leaving through a trail of unresolved ideas in their wake. As the last paragraph approaches, the flagging writer, aware he has little left in the tank, will tack on a panic-stricken finale involving a complete or partial reversal. Initial impressions are dramatically deepened and dimmed with the revelation that the artwork exhibition experience was not as initially imagined. It goes on and on and on. And that's the problem in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's not people doing it for the wrong reason. It is that people don't understand how to do it.
No.
And if we can educate people and get people to think more about what they're saying, what they're writing about, whether it be their own work or other people's,
Yeah.
the art world is instantly going to become a lot less untangled and ultimately a lot more accessible for the general population, which is good because it means more people come to see our exhibitions. More people come to see our shows, buy our books. We become very rich and very famous.
Ka-ching!
And get all the money.
All the money. Which is the reason.
Which is the reason that we're all doing this.
No, it's not.
I became a photographer to become rich.
I'm sure someone somewhere has said all photographers die old or something like that. Because
Not when I'm hit by a train next week.
No, as in like, you know, they yeah. But that's another topic, isn't it?
What, dying?
No, dying old and photographers all becoming famous when they're old. And sort of how long it takes for us to actually become famous.
Mm.
That's actually a really good topic. I think we've written that down.
Write it down.
I'm writing it down.
Write it down. What do you think? You, the audience.
The audience.
Do you think that we're right? Do you think we're wrong? Do you think that we've just been rambling for an hour and need to shut the hell up?
Yep. Do you think we need a bigger SD card? Because I do.
Yep. Working on that for next time.
Working on that for... Yep.
Do you think we should probably not have recorded this in like 4K 60 and maybe a slightly lower resolution format?
Probably.
Probably.
But quality over quantity, right? No, so I don't know whether you want to do a roundup.
Yeah, let's do a roundup.
Let's do a roundup. Are we just gonna read our notes here?
Read the notes.
People want photography to be more accessible. Explain. Quick.
Photographers need photography to be more accessible because they want people to give them more money. Steve Jobs said
10,
that...
9. Go, keep going. I'm giving you 15 seconds per point. Let's go.
What? That wasn't part of the deal.
That's part of the deal now.
Okay. People want photography to be more accessible, even though they don't necessarily realise they at the moment, because photography is quite a complicated thing. We need it to be more accessible so people understand it and therefore buy our books.
Yes. Theoretical discourse and its advantage is it overcomplicating photography.
Sometimes photography can use quite complex and abstract notions. However, I find that people fluff it up in quite long ways. Therefore, we need to make sure that we are writing about it in a concise but yet complicated way.
Fair enough. Where does it stem from?
Education.
Education, nice. People feel they need to because everyone else is. That's just a point.
Yeah, that's just a point about education.
Yeah.
And the education system. Which
we're not complaining about.
Slightly complained about.
Yeah, we're slightly complaining about for 50 minutes. Complicated pieces of work require complex explanations.
Pretty straightforward.
Mm.
And that was a counterpoint that sometimes they do need to be more complicated, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they should be fluffed up.
No.
For the sake of being fluffed up.
No. Because then not everybody can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Complex projects more likely to be noticed.
Yeah. Well, we touched on that as well, didn't we? That people feel that way, but it's not necessarily the case. And there are still some fantastic projects that are coming out, like Dan's, who
he's got another couple coming out as well. Yeah, I know. I'm keeping an eye.
Keeping an eye. But yeah, there are other notions that aren't. What was I saying?
Complex projects more likely to be noticed.
Oh yeah. Well, that's literally it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't have to have complex ideas in order to create successful work.
No.
Dan would. Missy Prince as well, actually.
Who?
Missy Prince, the latest Missy Prince. I showed you her book. I can't remember what it's called. Hang on.
Is that the one with the really nice train picture?
Yeah.
Oh man, that train track picture.
River's Edge.
Oh yeah. Is it the one with the train thing?
Yeah, the train one.
Oh, love that.
River's Edge by Missy Prince is another really good book.
But well explained.
But well explained, exactly. So pretty much anything by Another Place Press.
Yeah.
Follow Another Place Press.
They've got it nailed with the people they've published. Actually.
I love Ian.
We need
Ian,
guests.
if you're listening.
We need guests from the industry. I think we'll end it there. What's that? 55 minutes.
55 minutes.
That's not bad. Yeah, sorry about the camera. That's my
fault.
Your audio on video, Anna.
Yeah.
So I'll deal with that.
Should we sign off?
Should we shamelessly
plug? And on this episode, to shamelessly plugging, follow me on Instagram at Ben Bullman Photo.
And me at Jack Henderson Photo.
Check out the links in the description, because
all
of the people that we've written about are fantastic.
Spoken about.
Seen about. Heard about.
I haven't seen about. They're far too famous.
And I
don't know why I'm showing the camera this book.
Jack's holding the book up like, there you are, this is the book. And bye.
Yeah, yes. And until next time.
Bye.
Goodbye. 55 minutes.
Told you we could do it. It's all just waffling.
Yeah. Right, let's turn this shit off. I'm done and I've got a sweaty ass.
Are you going to mention sweat after every single episode?
Turn your fucking heating down.
I am sweating like a bitch.
I'm glad we didn't mention Brexit. Oh, fuck.